Morning all, hope you are all well. A bit consistent on the old dog walk at the minute, aren't we? Seems to be quite a lot of news to digest. I do try and write most of it up, but I also find it time-wise quite easy to kind of come on air and have a little chat with you lot. So deadline day is looming. It's tomorrow at 5 p.m. After that, clubs will still be able to sign free agents. So it's going to be interesting because I think with the number of free agents that are out there at the moment, there's an awful lot of scope for clubs to do business. I don't think that you would see us snapping up free agents. I think any business that we're likely to do to see us through till January will happen over the next 31 hours, I believe. I think it's 5 p.m. tomorrow, so that's more or less what we've got. Look, I think we've got an obvious potential incoming. Michael's mentioned it this morning in the press conference. He's talked about potential outgoings, 3 loans, which we'll look at here as well. And then obviously there's other big transfer news that looks like it's happening today that I want to discuss too. So got a little bit to pack in this morning. My dog's dragging his heels a bit. We've already had one aborted walk today thanks to a DPD delivery driver turning up next door and diverting attention. The dog's, not mine. I don't tend to bark at delivery men. So first of all, who we got on board this morning? We have got Rob Scott on board, morning man in a hat. I've got to wear a hat at the moment because my hair is shocking, and my hairdresser is off this week, or my barber is off this week. I won't go anywhere else. So that's why the hat. More fashion advice. Sam says, do I own any other hoodies? I rotate 3 hoodies for the dog walk, usually a week or so a piece. So I've got this one, I've got a Lincoln City one, and I've got another one. It just so happens that I've done 3 dog walks all in the same one. So we have Dan Shin on board. Good morning, Dan. We have Bri Fox on board. Good morning, Bri. And finally, last but not least, by any stretch of the imagination, we have Mr. Barlow online as well. Good morning. Right. So where do we start? Well, let's start with the transfer business that doesn't particularly directly impact the current squad. And that is the news that Ellis Chapman looks like he's signing for Cheltenham Town this morning. Now, let's not forget, first of all, Cheltenham Town are not the side struggling at the bottom of the division, which they were when we were at that level. They were a playoff finalist or a playoff semi-finalist. I think it was finalist, wasn't it? Last year, or semi-finalist, sorry, last year. Michael Duff's gone playing really nice football. They're a decent side. They're a good League Two side. The Ellis saga's rumbled on and on. You know, he was offered a new deal when the likes of Bozzy and Eardley are released. So when you think about what's happened since that day, you know, it has rumbled on for him. Now, from taking all kind of emotion out of it, must be tough for a young player, you know, 1 minute being told by his manager that, you know, Everton, playing against Everton in the FA Cup, being told by his manager he could be a £1 million player, that sort of thing, and then all of a sudden kind of stuck in limbo. And I was chatting to my good friend Pete yesterday, as I seem to always do, and we were talking about he was in a situation that was looking increasingly difficult to get out of, because as I understand it, and I'm happy to be corrected, he was offered a deal by Lincoln. He's 19 years old, so therefore if he moves somewhere else there's either a fee or a tribunal fee. Now, I don't think a team like Cheltenham would want to take a risk on a tribunal, purely because what if it comes back and it's 40 grand? You know, in these COVID times, I don't think any team that's not extravagantly funded have got that sort of money. And Cheltenham are not extravagantly funded, not by any stretch of the imagination. So I do wonder about a potential fee. I do wonder if maybe we've waived that. I don't know. We haven't really heard anything about the offer being on the table still. So it's an interesting one. It's an interesting situation. Now, I know through the course of the summer there were quite a few clubs linked with him. I mean, Rob here has mentioned, thought he was going to Brentford. I'd heard QPR. I'd heard Swindon. I'd heard Huddersfield, obviously. Of all of the teams, you know what? I actually think Cheltenham's the best place for Ellis to be. because as a 19-year-old prospect, he needs senior football. He did really well when he went to Chesterfield on loan. They loved him there, one of their most consistent players in the National League. I think he suffered a little bit because we were promoted, because after we went up, the levels around all went up. And whereas had we been in League Two, you know, manager change and all that, I don't know, but had we remained in League Two, I think he would have found senior football easier to come by. I don't think he looked particularly out of his depth when he came on last season. You know, certainly in the game against Peterborough, I think he settled relatively well. I thought Michael O'Connor was kind of was a player that it was important to have alongside Ellis. I think he needed that kind of experienced player. And then when Michael Appleton started leaning towards a much younger outlook across the team, I think that kind of set him back a little bit. January was obviously a really tough time for him. I mean, he was offered a new deal, as I understand it then, and again, I'm happy to be corrected, which he chose not to sign at the time. I think because young players such as Connor Coventry were coming in. My dog actually following me, unbelievable. Players such as Connor Coventry were coming in and instantly getting in the side. And I think, you know, as a young player, he'd been out, he'd tasted senior football at Chesterfield, he'd played some senior football for us. It was important, I think, that he plays some now. I think he'll get game time at Cheltenham. I think they play football in a style that will suit him. I think they play some short, neat passing, which I think, you know, he looked more than comfortable with. He's versatile, according to their news report. You know, we've seen him in midfield, but he could almost certainly play full back, which he did for Chesterfield as well. So I think it's a good move for him. How that manifests itself for us remains to be seen, whether there'll be any talk of a fee, whether, like Jordan Adebayo-Smith, we've allowed a pathway to develop by which Ellis can go and play football without implication. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I don't want to speculate too much. But that's the move that he's made. I wish him all the best. I really hope that he does go on and he does do really well at Cheltenham. And I hope that he makes a success of his career. He was a lovely lad. He was the player that came and did presentations for the Priory School the first year that we did the book. He gave his time up, you know, to come and speak to the kids there and meet the kids and have photos taken. I really appreciated that. Ash is asking, why do you think Ellis didn't sign? First team opportunities, Ash. I think it's as simple as that. I don't think there was a pathway to the first team for Ellis Chapman this season, and I think you know, he wants to be playing football. He's had a taste of senior football, and I think if you talk to some of the young players that have signed for us, I think if you look at the likes of Teo Eden and players like that, you know, when they've been out on loan and played senior football, they then don't want to go back to being a reserve or an under-23 or in and out of the side. Yeah, Ellis just wanted to play football, and I got that chatting to him at the Priory. That he just wanted game time massively, and I don't think that was ever going to come, unfortunately, with us in League One. Sorry, I thought there was a tractor coming there. It's actually my dog finally catching me up. So Nick says, what sort of fee are we talking? I don't know, Nick. To be honest, if there was a fee, I would imagine it would be nominal. Bear in mind, we took Ellis from Leicester, so I don't know how his development is judged, whether our time spent with him as an 11-year-old counts. I don't know. I don't know if there is a fee. That's kind of what I've been talking about, so I don't know. Dan says he's gutted about this. Great prospect, left footer as well. Yeah, I think it's always disappointing when a young player that's come through the ranks goes off elsewhere. What I would say is that when a young player comes through, goes off elsewhere through their own choice, and doesn't get lots of game time with us, it doesn't necessarily tend to work out. You know, I think back to Steve Williams went and played a handful of games for Mansfield. I seem to remember Luke Demesh was a player who actually came through with Ellis's dad, I believe, in our youth team. He left without playing a senior game for us and did really well at Mansfield. Then you look at the likes of Sam Clucas. Okay, we didn't develop him through the academy, but kind of left and went on to have a really good career. So be interesting to see what happens with Ellis, but we still wish him all the best. Okay, so second bit of news is apparently that Robbie Gotts, the Leeds United midfielder, is close to a deal with us. Michael has kind of said in the press conference today that that's reliant on some outgoings, which he suspects would be loans. But, you know, Alan Nixon and a few other people seem to think that, you know, he's chosen Lincoln. I think there's a couple of interesting angles to this. First of all, I've been writing about Robbie Gotts long before he was linked to Lincoln. Basically, as I've said many times before, I've explained how things like the real AFL works. You know, you're looking for the headlines that grab. And if there's one team outside of the big six which grabs headlines, it's Leeds United. The other one's Sunderland, if there's two. So when Robbie Gotts was being linked with the likes of Sunderland, Doncaster, Swindon, teams like that, it's Leeds midfielder linked with League One move, League Two move, gets a lot of views. That's the honest shout. So I've written about Robbie quite a bit. I know he's been on the bench 39 times for the Whites. He's only played a handful of games. I think he started the FA Cup game against Arsenal, which I seem to think Tyrese John-Jules was involved in on the bench as well. Very, very highly rated. Started as a right back. Marcelo Bielsa then claimed that he was an 8, that he was one of the most dynamic players that he had seen, which I think is really interesting. Hot property, dare I say. And I put players in tiers, kind of as they come down. And, you know, in Premier League terms, the likes of Harry Wilson, Ben Woodburn are one tier. You know, they're coming from Liverpool. Any League One side would be happy to have them. Then I think there's the tier 2 players, which are the likes potentially of TJ Ioma, Alex Palmer, who would grace any League One side. They're not the top players that are going to end up, they're going to go straight to the Championship, but they're players that have got the potential to play top flight football but need the senior experience in League One. And I put Robbie Gotts right there, kind of at that level. I know he's very highly rated. You know, Marcelo Bielsa's a football man and a half, isn't he? And if he's praising the ability of a young player, that young player is probably going to have a bit about him. And I think when you look at Leeds' academy as well, it's got a habit of creating good players. You've got Calvin Phillips, who's come through the academy there. You have the Ronaldo Vieira, is that his name? I might be wrong. Mario Vieira, who went off to play for Sparta Rotterdam, I think it was. You know, they've brought Leif Davis through, who's played first team football for them. So Leeds have got a good academy. They've got a good eye for a player. So if we're taking a player from their academy that other teams have been chasing, I think that's massive. Look at the other teams that have been chasing him as well. Now, this is paper speculation, so you don't know for definite. But Hull City. Now, as far as I am aware, Grant McCann actually did say he was interested in Robbie Gotts. I think it was Ben Woodburn he said he wasn't interested in. Sunderland were linked. Doncaster. These are teams that you might argue are a step above us. And I don't mean to be detrimental to Lincoln City, but in terms of their development, in terms of the years spent, certainly Sunderland and Hull over the last 10, 15 years are. Doncaster have been regular League One side now for many years. And I think when you look at those teams, that's where we aspire to be. Not perhaps Sunderland, but, you know, we aspire to be a League One side like Doncaster that are established, or a side that drop out of the Championship. I mean, that would be phenomenal. So these are big clubs compared to Lincoln City. So if he is choosing us for any reason other than finances, I think it's a huge, huge coup. I think it's really interesting to see Doncaster allegedly pulled out because of financial issues. But Michael is kind of saying that, look, if anybody comes in, he's going to have to be doing us a favour. And it's about trying to find the balance, but trying to find the fill-in between the two rounds of bread that make up a sandwich of a news story. Because there are always two sides to a story, and you never get the actual proper story, I don't think, not entirely. You know, we're not going to get Robbie Gotts for free. At the same time, I don't think that we're going to overpay for him either. I don't think that we're going to be a financial clout. I think that we're run far too sensibly for that. I don't think that we would overspend on a lone player at all. So if he comes in, and it is still an if, we know it's still an if, I think that it is a coup in terms of the teams that we've beaten off, in terms of the club that he's coming from, and in terms of the trust, yet again, that is being put in our coaching staff. And I'm not quite sure. You know, that's Michael. It's David Kerslake. Let's not forget, you know, Kers was assistant manager to Malcolm Mackay at Cardiff. Done a really good job there. from what I understand. So we've got trusted staff. Just a word here from Pete. Aspiring to be like Doncaster, do me a favour. Liam moved to Lincoln in the conference from League One. Doncaster, Lincoln are a bigger club. First of all, he moved from a different position at Doncaster, so it was a step up in terms of positions. I think Lincoln has the potential to be a bigger club. What I'm talking about is a team that is stable in the top half of League One. That's Doncaster. There's no arguing with that. They were in the playoffs 2 years ago. They were a top 10 last year. That's what we're aspiring to be. I'm not talking about fan base, stadiums, anything like that. I'm talking about consistent league positions. So that's where I'm getting the Doncaster thing from. Let me know, by the way, if the sound is okay, because it's quite windy up here and I'm obviously operating on this new microphone. So anyway, that's what I think about the potential Robbie Gott's capture in terms of the size of the business. When you look at the position that Gotts can play, he can play in central midfield as an 8. I think it's a position that you could argue we are a little short on. I mean, I think Teo is a slick midfielder, but there's some developing to do around our style, I believe. You know, he likes probably to take a few more touches on the ball than our midfield needs to at the moment. I think he's in and around the first team. Thank you, Chris Townsend and Kevin Green, for telling me the sound's good, by the way. So he's an option in the centre midfield, but then he's also an option at left back, and we need more cover. You've got Liam Bridcut and George Grant can probably play what Michael Horton calls the quarterback role. Got Conor McGrandles and James Jones who can play the 8 role. But if we're going to continue to play a 4-3-3, I think that another midfielder is probably a sensible move. Alex Bradley, I'll come on to. Remy Howarth I'll come on to, but I think Robbie Gotts is a different, when I say different quality, a different level of player. Talking about coming through a top flight academy, really interesting. Gotts can't, I'm not told, Jake Tong said there, Teo isn't the left back. Gotts can do a good job on the left. I've watched him for Leeds under 23s. That's interesting because he's actually coming here billed initially as being a right back, which is where I see the attraction for Michael. Again, Alex Bradley's filled in at left back. Aaron Lewis, who knows? So at the moment, really, you've got Teo or Harry Anderson. I think the way that things have developed over the last 10 games, Michael is acutely aware of the fact that we've got, I think, 18 or 19 games between now and the January transfer window. To get through those, we probably need full-back cover. If we were to lose a centre-back through injury, it would be tough then with potentially TJ dropping into the centre of defence. We've seen with Adam Jackson's suspension, if Joe Walsh isn't fit this weekend, then who do you play in the centre of defence? Rowan's left foot with Monsma, so you probably play TJ. Then you've got to play somebody at right back. If Jones isn't fit, Bradley isn't quite up to League One standard yet. So you see where the problem could arise. And I've said that I think fullback was a position that we probably needed covering. And if you're bringing in somebody like Robbie Gott, who's then got the ability to play midfield to a level that is League One quality, I think that speaks volumes for why we're bringing him in. In order to bring him in, it's getting windy up here now. In order to bring him in, I'm told that, or Michael said in the press conference, potentially 3 going out on loan. Potentially 3. I think that's interesting. Look, I think. Sorry, my dog's just got under my foot. Does everyone want to say hello before we carry on? Say hello, Charlie. Yeah, nice. So I think, who are the 3? That's what I think. That's a question. Sorry, I had to compose myself there for a minute. So I think Alex Bradley almost certainly. I think the idea was always to send Alex Bradley out on loan, not to let him go. I think Michael feels that there is development potential within Alan Bradley. He was the baddie on Coronation Street years ago. Alex Bradley. I think he sees him as a fullback. He certainly needs senior games, toughen up a little bit. Don't think he's at League One quality at the moment. Was certainly National League quality last season. Potentially, therefore, League Two loan. If not League Two, then top end of the National League. But to get some senior experience and to see if he can kick on. So I think Alex Bradley is almost certainly one of the 3 that they're talking about going out on loan. Aaron Lewis is the other. And Dom Clark has said there, Lewis, any clues? I've heard whispers around Aaron Lewis, which I'm not going to go into because I don't deal in unsubstantiated rumours. I know that his injury situation has not been ideal. I know that obviously he's played or he's been away with Wales under-21s. He doesn't look like he's close to the first team. He didn't appear in pre-season. He hasn't appeared in the first 10 games of the season. I know fans very much like Aaron Lewis from the brief outings we've seen. I mean, he did really well when he came on against Accrington, did really well against Everton in the Cup last year. But, you know, we need players that you can rely on to play 30 games a season if needed without picking up niggly injuries. And if none of the rest of the squad are picking up niggly injuries and one player is, for me, you begin to ask questions around that. I think now the squad has gelled and progressed to a point where Aaron Lewis is probably left behind. Yeah, when I went to speak to Michael, he was saying how Theo Archibald was behind the side, and that was after the Oxford game. So, you know, we're 8 games on from that now. Theo Archibald is getting up to speed. I don't see Aaron being at that level. So a loan spell would seem relatively obvious for us, I think. He needs senior football. I think if he gets senior football, he sorts himself out, his fitness, his attitude's right, I think Aaron Lewis is a League One fullback, and I think we could benefit from having him around the squad. But at the moment, the work that needs to go in with Aaron, I think, is on a pitch, playing senior football. That ain't happening. So he's one I think I could see going out on loan. The final one that I think would benefit from a loan spell, and for me this would need to be a short-term loan spell, probably Zach El-Bazedi. Now, I like Zach. I like him as a person. You know, I get to speak to the players, and Zach, I'm not going to say he's like he's different from when I've spoke to him. I think he doesn't ooze the confidence. I think Michael says he beats himself up when he makes errors, or, you know, when he's not in the team. So I think he needs senior football to build his confidence. He's just a really nice, grounded lad. You know, I spoke to him and he was telling me about, you know, his family values and how he really enjoyed cooking. You don't get that sort of thing from a footballer usually. But he needs senior football. I was really impressed with him in pre-season, particularly against Salford. I thought he had a really good game. I know we were beaten. There was another one, I think it was Scunthorpe at home. He impressed me. A short-term loan spell, I think, would be good for him. At the moment, you know, he's behind George Grant on the left. He's behind Theo Archibald on the left. I think Remy Howarth is likely to stay around the first team because of his flexibility, not particularly because he's at, you know, a higher level than Zach El-Bazedi, for instance. But I think his flexibility kind of allows you to mix and match in the last stages of games. You know, Remy came on the right. Don't think it's his position. I like to see him in the centre, but I can't see it being him going out on loan. So it wouldn't surprise me if it's Zach El-Bazedi, but not in a surplus to requirements loan, not in a you're going away because you've got something to prove loan, but just in a, at this moment in time, you know, the pecking order is such that, yeah, it's going to be tough for you to get senior football even when the EFL trophy comes around, because, you know, if we keep the same first team of kind of Grant and Hopper and Anderson, when the EFL trophy comes around, you want to see Theo Archibald playing on the left, because I think he's a player with massive potential, and that leaves Zach El-Bazedi just kind of knocking on the window, doesn't it, saying, you know, when am I going to get in? He goes away till January, plays for a League Two or a non-league National League club and scores 5 or 6 goals in 10 or 12 appearances, and all of a sudden he comes back full of confidence, revitalised, and, you know, a serious kind of addition to our arsenal. So they're the 3. I don't think young Sam Long will go out on loan. I know that he's a third goalkeeper. I suppose there is a potential there for him to go somewhere and get senior football like Spalding or something like that. But having spoken again to Michael, you understand that they're really excited about Sam's progression. And I think that it helps a young keeper sometimes just to be working around the likes of Alex Palmer and Ethan Ross and pushing each other on the training ground day in, day out. And I think he would benefit from that. Admittedly, if he goes somewhere like Spalding, he would be around the club training every day and then off playing senior football. But for me, I think that he will certainly stay. As I said, Remy was the other player that potentially might go away on loan, but I think with his versatility and the fact that he's been probably more closely involved with the first team than certainly Zach has been, I don't see that happening either. And then there's Jordan Adebayo-Smith. I think this morning Michael said he's had 6 odd trials that the club are allowing him to go on. They haven't come to anything as yet. I suppose there's a potential there, if it's not Zach, for it to be Jordan to go back out on loan. A kind of you know, a last chance saloon, dare I say. You know, he's almost been earmarked as surplus to requirements. You know, but if the trials are not coming off and somebody says, well, actually, we'll take him for 6 months and give him 6 months, and he goes, let's say, to a Boston United or a Gainsborough Trinity, and actually gets in the team and scores 5, 6, 10, 12 goals, then again, you sit up and take note. And I think Michael's the type of player that doesn't just write players off if they fit his style. You know, I think last season there was a lot of the senior pros were written off because they didn't fit the style and that sort of thing. But at the same time, I think, you know, if Jordan went away and impressed and came back and had learned and developed inside the 6 months, I think Michael would be happy to take that on board. Who knows? So that's what I see in terms of transfer deadline. I'll make sure there's no tractors coming on this track. Couple of questions just before we wrap up, because it's gone on a little bit longer than I would normally imagine. So Dan Shin, do you prefer Grant out wide or in the centre? Good question. Depends on the opposition, Dan, to be honest. I think if you're playing against fullbacks that haven't particularly got the pace, or you're looking at trying to break a team down and there isn't space in behind, so you've got to unpick from the front, then I like him out wide, because I think he's got, sorry, that sun's terrible, isn't it? I think he's got the skills to pay the bills. You know, he's got a great ball on him, really hard worker. And if we're not looking to exploit space with pace, I'm always like a poet this morning, then I can see how he benefits out wide. I like him out there. But he does a great job inside as well. And, you know, if Liam Bridcut is injured for any reason, or if Liam comes off for any reason, then I think that's where George then sits in the middle. I'd be hesitant to say that I like him in the 10 role, because I think when you've got the likes of Brennan Johnson, who's kind of got that pace, almost looks like a natural 9 as well. So, you know, you go in a 4-4-1-1, but it quickly becomes a 4-4-2. He can overlap, get in and around Tom Hopper. I think that's important. And I think when you saw Hopper the other day dropping outside the area to get the ball against Bristol Rovers and then putting crosses in, and he's the man that's meant to be in there, you know, and in that 4-3-3, I think at times we just lacked that person getting on the end of the balls when Tom's dropped out. So, yeah, I think Brennan Johnson's the 10, not George. Possibly George in the 6 or the 8. But then, you know, you've got McGrandles, you've got Jones, potentially Robbie Gotts as well. George will always play. I think that he's the second name on the team sheet after Liam Bridcut, senior professional. I like him on the left. But I think it's one of those where everybody will have a slightly different opinion. And again, as long as he's in the team and he's on form, don't think it matters whether it's the left or the centre he plays in. I think when he plays on the left, you can see him drifting inside. You can see him popping up in the channels. And I think that's something about Michael's tactics that we should be aware of, that it's very fluid. So if a player is playing on the right, he can suddenly pop up on the left. I think we saw Teo Eden, you know, playing left back, popping up in the right channel against Blackpool to relatively good effect. I'm trying to work that sun out. So, you know, I think it's kind of horses for courses, depends who we're playing. Rob Evans says Sam Long, Lincoln United would be a good shout. Yeah, potentially. Potentially would get some senior football, almost certainly. That sun's killing me, sorry. Would be a decent sight. Morning, Gary. Hope you all feels far less rangy. I'm assuming that's sound-wise, which is good. Oh, no, but it's meant to say ranty, isn't it? Yeah, much less ranty. Keith Jordan, convert Monsmer into a centre-forward. Do you know what? When you look at the way that he plays his football, I think there's potential for Monsmer to play elsewhere on the field. And, you know, it's not unheard of, is it? I mean, we had Matt Carmichael, who used to play centre-back for us, I believe. He came as a centre-forward, played centre-back, went to Scunthorpe, scored 25 goals. So, you know, interesting. Very interesting. I do think the centre-forward position is a challenging one for us. I think since Callum got injured, you know, I think Tom started well. Arguably, you know, he wins free kicks, he puts himself about. As a goal scoring threat, I don't think he's as potent as Callum might have been if Callum had settled in properly. So it's interesting. You know, I think there is space up front for competition for places. So look, I've rattled on for nearly half an hour now, so we've covered really the transfer deadline, potential transfer deadline movement. I think if Robbie Gotts doesn't come in, I do think Michael will sign somebody who I don't know. You know, when he's pulling out the likes of El Bazedi and Monsma from different places, it's hard to second guess, isn't it? I'm really sorry about that, Sunlight. So expect one in. I think expect 2 or 3 out, and from there, expect the unexpected. I will see you all again soon. Take care.